Hello, Shiva.
Yep, yep.
I'm just going to say the class is not recording. So now it is recording.
What is that?
I just wanted to ask you to record the class, but yeah, now
Oh,
it is recording. Thank you.
okay, okay. Uh, yeah, basically, so as last in the last session we discussed about how we making use of the Spring container and how the Spring container has been represented and how our XML file should be configured and how the relation is happening now between the classes instead of directly tightly coupling and instead of required class creating the dependencies classes. Spring Bean will be responsible in creating the dependency classes that required for the class for a particular class to be executed, right? So let's go back to little bit of theory around and different ways of doing it, and then we'll come back to programs again. Okay, so like I mentioned, Spring IOC container, it is just a process where your objects, where your Netflix class defining their dependencies like movie finder. And these simple movie finders, instead of creating by Netflix, you are injecting through setters into Netflix class. So this process is nothing but dependency injection or inversion of control. Okay, so what are the two ways of doing it? One is through setters, another one is through constructor. Okay, so before going to that, like there are two types of containers we have. One is core container, another one is J2E container. Okay, the core container is actually Bean Factory class. J2E container is application context. So the one that we use to load the container, right? Application context. This is the what you called J2E container. There is another called Bean container, Bean Factory. This is Bean Factory is nothing but core container. Okay, so this is core container. The below one is application context is J2E container. So what are the differences between these two? Basically, Bean container is the core version, basic version, and application container is the upgraded version of Bean Factory, which means Bean Factory is just to create the beans and give it back to you. But application context, what it does, it can support you internationalization. Like, if you are using a app in US, it will show English. If you are using app in South America, it will show in Spanish, kind of thing. Okay, and there are a lot of internationalization support, all the stuff is there. So that is the core difference. Okay, so whatever Bean Factory does, application context also does same thing, but along with that it supports some additional features as well. Okay, so what is the responsibility of the container? What is the responsibility of the container? It's no more responsibility of Netflix class to create movie finder. It's the responsibility of the container to create the beans. So container's responsibility is create instances and dependency injection. So create instances and dependency injection. Create instances. This is creating an instances, and dependency injection, injecting movie finder into Netflix bean. This is dependency injection. Lifecycle management. We'll see what there are different ways. Like there is before creating the bean. That is before creating the bean instance. How does bean creates? Even though if you are not creating internally, JT container will create the same way, right? Like creating the using the new operator, using the constructor. So before calling the constructor, if you want to do something else, those or else after calling the constructor, if you want to do post creation of the bean, then those are all considered as life cycle management. Like, before creating the bean, after creating the bean, if you want to decorate your bean before creating your bean, if you want to provide some inputs to that, those kind of things are considered as life cycle management of the bean. So here is the bean factory container. What it does at the time of container startup, container startup, loads the Spring XML file and parse the XML file, well formed or not, and validates the tags using the SAX parser. What does it mean? At the time when you run the program, loads the XML file, and using the SAX parser, it will verify is it well formed or not. Well formed or not in the sense, if I keep something like this is not well formed. Okay, I mean this is not properly validated. Okay, so whether it is well formed or not, and validates the tags using the SAX parser and then creates the instance of the bean where when the user requests for the bean, which means until and unless, so this XML file has been passed, this XML file been verified as well formed or not, but it doesn't start creating the beans. When it start creating the beans in your application, when you start accessing for a particular bean, then it will start creating those beans. It doesn't create at the container startup, application startup itself. Until and unless you explicitly call for that particular bean, it doesn't create. So creates the instance of the bean when the user requests for the bean. That's what the line means. Okay. By default, all the beans are configured singleton. What does it mean? Let's say I'll create it for the sake of Amazon. Both are, let's say, both are using same kind of movie finder logic. Okay, so you should not have different instances in it, right? So you created this movie finder here, and you are injecting this movie finder into Amazon, you are injecting this movie finder into Netflix as well. So how many movie finder objects will be created? Only one. By default, only one instance will be created. Okay, which means same movie finder logic will be shared between Netflix, Amazon. Same movie finder instance will be injected. By default, singleton. Okay, by default, all the instances are singleton. That's what that line means. Okay, how do you load? This is the typical two lines. Bean factory loading. Resource first, new class path resource. You need to mention the beans.xml, whatever the name of the XML file, and then pass that resource to XML bean factory. Then you got the factory. Then what you need to do? Factory.get bean of whatever the bean that you want. Okay. So how about application context? At the time of container startup, loads the Spring XML file, same as core container, parse the XML file well formed or not, and validates the tags using the SAX parser. There are two types of parsers, DOM parser and SAX parser. Go back and check what are the disks. Okay. Creates the instance of the all beans with singleton scopes at the time of application startup. At the time of application starts up, creates all the instances of all the beans with singleton scope. Here in bean factory, what happens? Until and unless someone explicitly requests, until and unless this line executes, laptop details bean doesn't create. But when it comes to application context scenario, as soon as this line executes, all the beans that has been configured inside the beans.xml will be created and loaded with singleton. Okay, that is the core difference between application context. One more difference is core bean factory. Bean factory is until and unless someone make a request for a particular bean, then that bean doesn't create. But in application context, all the beans will be created, which are all the beans with singleton scope will be created at the time of application startup itself, irrespective of bean request is there or not. But if the bean scope is prototype, at the time of each request, bean will be created. What is prototype is? This is singleton. Prototype is simple. Netflix, Amazon, movie finder 1 will be assigned here. Movie finder 2, same instance, another instance, separate instance will be created. Okay, make sense? So that is prototype. Okay, by default singleton until and unless you explicitly mention. Okay. So how do you load? Application context equal to new class path XML context application context. That's what we did right here. This is the line. Okay. So then next topic is, so those are the containers. So what is the other thing? Dependency injection can be achieved either through setter method or constructor. Yesterday we did both, right? So this is through constructor, but we did only primitive, and this is through setter property setter. Okay, and you can inject both primitives as well as references. You can inject both primitives as well as references. And then IOC container is designed to load in such a way that it will load private constructors as well. Yeah, that is okay. One setter method will take only one input parameter. Okay. So this is the basic way of defining. How do you define a bean in the XML file? Bean ID equal to class, scope, and then this is one way, setter way, property, name and name of the value. This is one way of injecting the basic definition, primitives, injecting the primitives. If it is int, name mention int here, and then value is something, whatever it is the value, double value, float value. Okay, this is the primitive injection. How do you want to inject a array list? Any list, vector or anything. Bean ID, class, scope, and then property. This is the array list name, set as many values as you want. Here you need to provide the value. In between the value, whatever the value that you want to provide, you can provide. So this is how you can define the array list. This is where you can inject the array list into the bean. How do we inject the maps? This is the structure. Bean ID, class name, scope will be same, property, name of the hash map, and key value. Map is key value, right? Key and value. You can inject as many values as you want. Okay. So in order to access this list related stuff, right, you need to include this util package. I think we already included in that util package. We haven't included. We need to explicitly add this one here. Then only it will start understanding. Namespace we need to explicitly add. Okay. And then this is the constructor way of doing it. This is earlier ones is all property based, right? This is the constructor. Bean ID constructor arg name value. That is one way. Another way is bean ID class value, and if you don't want to provide the name of the field, you can provide the index. In this case, Where is it? In this case, if you don't want to provide the name, you can provide the index. This is index 0, this is index 1. You can do that. So that it will be mapped corresponding values. Index, using index also you can map. Or else value, index and type. So by using this way, there is no ambiguity. So index 0 will be of type string and the value is blah blah blah. And index 1 of type int, value is blah blah blah. Okay. So to make setter dependency injection mandatory, using dependency check, by default it is none, simple for primitives, objects. Yeah, this one annotation we'll discuss when we start. Yeah. So let's say if class A is depending on class B and they are not injecting, they're just depending on class A is depending on class B, then what you need to do in class A, you need to mention it depends on class B. Okay. What does it mean? Like, if you have a class A extends class B, which means class A is depending on class B as well, right? So you need to mention depends on B. So first what will happen? It will create the bean class B bean, and then it will start creating the class A. So then it doesn't fail kind of thing. Okay. So up to here, I want to show one scenario. I asked you guys to try with what you called Java released all the stuff, right? I think I asked you guys to try that one, right? Okay. So next option is which one we can try? We can try auto wiring directly. If we try auto wiring, yeah, let's start doing auto wiring. So in this program, like, you are explicitly mentioning the dependencies and all the blah 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 stuff, right? So there are scenarios where you want to do auto wire. Auto wire is something, instead of explicitly configuring in the beans, you can simply using annotations. Okay, annotations is like by representing at the rate some key, okay. By using annotation is nothing but on each field what you will do is at the rate, and you mention the annotation type. So what does it mean is Java will understand, okay, there is some functionality has been need to be applied around that field, so let me apply that. But auto wiring applies on only objects and reference variables, not on the primitives. Okay, remember that. And then let's do one program. Let me do one program for you guys. this is XML based, right? So slowly we'll in the beginnings, in the spring, right? In the beginning they started doing, okay, let's keep separately, and container will look for the XML file and it will start working on it. So as the spring getting in the evolution of spring, they kind of understand doing in XML also a little bit painful. Let's use some annotations within the Java, and container will become smart enough to understand those annotations and then work accordingly, so that Java developer need not to worry about XMLs. Okay, that's the goal of advanced going for annotations. So let's do one by one. Once we do the programs, we can understand this. I will see. Autowired. Inside we need to create one file called, sorry, folder, right? Resources. Okay, so first thing what we do, we create XML file. Autowired configure. Yeah. So let me copy all the shared garage when they're here. This is going to be common across, right? So these things always be same, right? There doesn't, maybe you need to add one or two, but most of the times that is same. And what you need to do, another thing is update your pom.xml. So nothing is there pom.xml. If you go to IOC, to confuse, if you go into IOC Autowired, just we created, right? You don't see any dependencies here, right? As soon as I'll copy from as soon as I copy from here, you will see all the dependencies will start getting added. So this nothing is there, right? So as soon as I add, let me close everything. Here observe this part. We need to add one more thing is property file, right? I mean version of the application. Spring version we need to add. Then only it will get your values. Same Maven dependencies sorted. All the Maven dependencies has been added. Whatever you configured here, those jar files will be available here. Okay, Maven inside Maven dependencies. Okay. So okay, good. Where is your property file? Okay. Spring context, Spring Beans, Spring MVC. Let's see how far it works. Basically, as soon as you want annotations, right? As soon as your annotation should work, you need to use this tag all the time. Context is global, right? So you are conveying your Spring container that I am going to use annotations as well in my application. By keeping this line, you are conveying your container that you're going to use annotations in your application. Okay, so let's go back and write some programs. That's all goal, right? So that's how we can understand. What kind of scenario we can try? Let's write a plane is having engine scenario. Okay, in dependencies we always need dependencies to stimulate this kind of scenario, right? Engine, I'll create one engine class. In engine class, let's see, we simple have private string engine type. Okay, if somebody asks engine class, it will give you engine type, what kind of engine type it is. Okay, so public void set engine engine type. So somebody will pass that value, right? engine type engine type, and then you are assigning that value to this engine type equal to engine type. Okay, so somebody will call the setter, right? Somebody, in our case our XML is going to call, right? We know that. And then public void, we just display. Okay, yes, whatever the value is there. Okay. So this is our simple class. As I know that I am going to inject this engine type string into engine class with the setter injection using the container string container, and then I am going to use this engine class will be injecting into the plane class. Let's say plane. Okay, what it does, it simply, what it does is like, public, let's say, so our typical way of doing is private engine will be injected here in engine class, engine class. I hope you're following with me. So this is engine class. Someone is going to inject that engine type into engine class. Engine type is string, and now we are injecting engine class into plane. Okay, so somebody is going to inject, that is nothing but in our case like Spring container is going to inject, so I'm going to use setter here as well. Okay, set engine engine this dot engine equal to engine, and then what I will ask is get engine, public void get engine sorry engine. Okay, yeah, another scenario is, so now we need to write our configuration for this, right, for these two classes in our XML file. So before we converting into auto wiring, I'll just show it to you how to do typical way, and then we convert it. Okay, in our auto wire config, bean. Normally what you do, bean id equal to engine class equal to, first you will create this guy, right? Dot engine, and then inside engine you need to inject the property name, right? Property name equal to engine type. You can pass whatever the name type, right? Jet engine. Okay, that is the property you injected. So now for in this class, this one is getting injected through setter, the way you configured in your XML. This engine type is jet. Jet will be assigned to engine types engine. So if somebody calls display, this value will be displayed, jet engine, right? Okay, nice. Another way, and then what you will do, bean id equal to plain class equal to com dot bell info dot batch 4 dot IOC dot plain. What needs to be injected into this? What's need to be injected into this? Engine, right? So how is that injected into the plain? Setter. So property name engine reference equal to, this is the engine, reference is this one, right? Just like the way we did here for basic IOC settings, right? Property movie finder, right? Same way. So same as is I did just now again, okay? So now if you go to your app class, we haven't implemented annotation yet. I'll just show it to you before it. First thing is typical lines. I'm not going to repeat again, so I'll just copy paste to save some time. What is the name of our beans XML file? Autowired -config. Where is that? Autowired -config.xml file. Okay. Then you need to what? All you need to do is plain p equal to context dot get, sorry, wait, see, context, not context, ctx dot get bean plain.xml plain.class. Here What is the plane engine? You configured in your auto configure. This is 1 unit as per plane. And then p dot get engine. Get engine will return engine class dot display. By doing that, now I'm going to get Autowired what you called run as com bill info batch IOC is something wrong and copy pasting is better always. ENGINE. Set engine, right? So this is yesterday, last time also we did it. So now you got Boeing engine. Okay. So now what is auto wiring? What exactly you going to do in auto wiring, right? So all you're going to do is, instead of auto wiring an engine type here, remove this guy. Okay. You just say, don't explain the dependency here. Okay. Don't explain the dependency here. Engine is not, if here in XML file, instead of explaining in the XML file that engine is dependent, plane is independent of engine, instead of explaining here, instead of auto wiring here, do it in Java. That is do it in Java. Instead of configuring in XML file that plane is depending on engine, do it through Java using the auto wire concept. Okay, which line I disconnected? You guys understand which line I disconnected? This line, right? This line I disconnected. Let me copy this. Okay, I commented. Okay. Then how does it understand? Now if I run, right, it will fail because it doesn't find exception, null pointer exception, and it didn't find proper value. Okay. So how do you inject engine class? Is simple. All you need to do is use the keyword @ annotations represent with @ in Java. Okay. Auto wired. So what you're doing is, when the container application starts, load all the beans that has been there. By default, all the beans will be loaded, right? Engine will be loaded and engine type will be injected. Plane will be loaded. While plane is loading, instead of communicating there is a dependency, it looks for, as you mentioned, annotations config. Annotations also there in the application as you communicating to the Spring container by this line with the highlighted line, that there are some annotations. Go back and look before you're loading all the fields. So it will scan every file in the Java files. It will scan every Java file and looks for where and all the auto wired annotations are there. Then based on that annotation, okay, he is saying there is a plane class and he is looking for engine with Autowired. So plane is depending on the engine. So what it will do? Container. Okay. So there are two beans, plane and engine, and plane is depending on engine. So let me create first engine. Okay. Let me create first engine, and then before creating a plane, inject that engine into plane class. So this line is replaced, the highlighted line has been replaced with Autowire. Okay, so now the configuration reduced, right? Let's say if your plane is having not only engine class, let's say there will be what you called type of planes, and another one is configuration of the plane. So there are 3 to 4 classes. So instead of doing 3 to 4 classes injecting here, like instead of injecting 3 to 4 classes, different classes here, what you're doing is you just going here and injecting them here one by one, one by one, which using an Autowire. That is what called annotations Autowire concept. Okay. So another interesting point you need to keep remember is let's say you created engine here. Let's call it as E1 for time being. Okay. And you created E2. You created E1 and E2. Okay. And then let's see, I'll explain, don't worry. So that is Boeing engine. This is jet engine. Okay. This is Boeing engine. One engine class is Boeing engine type. Another engine class is jet engine type. And your plane, which one it should take? Let's run the program and see what will happen now. You got an exception because it looks by type engine, ENGINE. Is there anything ENGINE? Nope. Okay. Then it will go for type. And it go for type. There are 2 classes. Same classes are there. Two engine classes are there with E1 and E2. Which one it should consider? Which one it should Autowire? It created engine E1. It created engine E2. But among these E1 and E2, which one should inject into plane? There is a ambiguity, right? You are with me. So what you need to do in your plane class, there are 2 things you need to do. One is Autowire and then @ qualifier. You need to communicate value equal to what is the value, whether you want if you want Boeing engine you need to say E1. Qualifier is E1. E1 means Boeing engine. So if you run the program, Boeing engine. If you go back here in the plane, if you say E2 engine, jet engine. Makes sense. So what you're trying to do, in order to avoid the ambiguity, if you have a same class type, when you are doing auto-wiring by default happens by type of the class. Okay. There are different types of auto-wirings are there, by type, by name, what you called, let me open. Very bad. By name, by type, constructor, default, no, right? So by default is by type. Auto-wiring happens by default by type. So if it finds 2 same types and there will be an ambiguity, so then that's the you need to communicate which one you want by using the qualifier. So in order to resolve the ambiguity, you need to use the qualifier. Okay, this annotation may be used on a field or a parameter as a qualifier for a candidate means when auto-wiring. It may also be used to annotate other custom annotations that can be then in turn to be used as a qualifier. So in order to identify which one is the right engine for your plane class, you need to use the qualifier if there is more than one engine types has been configured in your Autowire config.xml file. Are you guys with me? Okay. So what and all you need to do for auto-wiring? You need to do first thing, context annotation config. Another thing is, instead of doing injection, through XML you can do @Autowired, but if there is more than one engine type is configured in your XML file, then use the qualifier to communicate which engine type need to be considered for plain. Okay, that's all about auto wiring. Are you guys okay? Okay, so let's do another program. What you'll is like a properties loading. So for properties loading, okay, let's write another program quickly. So what is the way of loading the properties and connections, right? So this is auto wiring. You guys understand? So just keep that in mind. One project. Oh, see. Property loading. Okay. See how properties loads through IOC. IOC property. So two things I need to do by default is configure from here to here. First thing. Okay, from the previous. Okay, good. Next thing is copy your XML configuration. Just as is copy and then we can remove retaining part. Okay. What is the problem with this guy? Something is not properly loaded. Yeah, this piece is not required. And then you need to create a resource class. Okay, in resource class property loader, we can call it as a property configuration XML file, right? Other. So this and all I can simply say go back and look, but I just want to give you, this is the important piece that you guys need to understand. Remaining MVC Spring you need to understand. This is so important. IOC is so important basically. Okay. This is where I'll say copy paste and I'll remove this piece. Okay. So this is a basic piece, will be there all the time. For this, right, there is one more point we need to add, if my understanding is correct. XML as colon util util package. We need to have this util section. Same as is context. Just paste it here. Util features. And then corresponding schema location you need to mention. So copy paste this guy. This is schema util package. Spring util 3.0.xst. Okay. So basically what I'm trying to explain you guys is, let's say I want to load the database properties, right? So today you are connecting to Postgres, in future you want to connect to some other database, right? So the let me share. Don't worry, I'm just setting up drivers dot properties. There are different ways of doing. I'll show you to one important way of doing it. So in drivers, right, what is the driver class we have? Driver key property file. Dot property file is something. Dot property file, right? Anything dot property is something which can hold key values, something which can hold key and value, okay? So if you ask by key, you can get the value. And the good thing is, if all the values, if you configure here, so in future you don't need to change the code, Java code. You just simply come and modify the, today you are using Postgres, right? Tomorrow if you want to use SQL, you just come and modify your driver class so that it will directly connect to the SQL rather than Postgres. You getting my point? So all you need to do is, here all the data you configured is key value standards PostgreSQL dot driver. This is our driver class. And what is the URL we have? I hope you guys remember JDBC, right? I'm just whatever I remember, I'm just trying to type it here. JDBC. So what is the URL? This is the URL. And what else is there? Username, password. Okay. What is the username? Password is username. So I'm just showing how do you load the properties. So I'm taking an example of database connectivity. Okay, these are the details. I want to load these details into my Java classes when the application comes up and make use of it. That's the goal. Okay. That is the goal of doing it. So if now I configured all property details, I want to load them. So the best way to load is, how do you establish? Now data is there in property file. You want it in Java code, but you need to configure through XML file. So how do you make the relation between your property file, XML file and Java? That's what we're all trying now. Okay. In XML file, what you need to do is, a typical way, you need to create a bean and equal to property simple, I'll care property loader pp something, some name. Okay, I just want to use same class This is the built-in class that has been there. Okay, I mean not built-in class. What I mean is you can write your own class and load all these data. Okay, so how do you do that? Class name. Let's create a class. Property loader. Okay. In property loader, what we will do is what we can do, just connecting loading the properties files is fine, or what we can do, property loader, what we can do. Yeah, let's write it. If you start writing it, private, you need connection anyways, connection, and so it will cry, it doesn't understand, so we download, you can tell him, and then private properties db details. Okay, and then you know what and all the values that will be there, right? So private string driver, private string URL, private string username, private string password. Okay, then what we can do is you are going to inject the data. Just confused you which way is to better. Okay, so these are the data that we are going to load in the property file. Let's come back to our IOC property loading. In IOC property loading, what we can do is we can just mention that class com dot, what is the class name, property loader, right? Nothing, I'm just trying to see what is a better way of explaining. Okay, so don't get confusing. That's it. All we're trying to do is establishing the relation between your Java class and your property file and XML file. Where the data will be loaded from, how the property file data will be loaded into XML, how this XML load data will be provided to the Java class. Right? So we created a property loader class, so corresponding property loader class has been created. Inside you're going to have property. Whenever I use property, what does it mean? It is using setter based injection, right? Name, let's call some db details. Inside, this is important, this line. Okay, util properties, this is big, what you call Spring provided support util properties. When you say util properties, okay, you are going to provide the location of the properties file. Okay, so what it will do, location equal to, where is the location? It's in the class path. What is the file name? Drivers dot properties. Okay, so what happens by doing this? Okay, try to understand what happens by doing this. You have a property loader class. Into that you are injecting as db details with a property name you say as a setter. By asking load the drivers dot property file and prove and give access those whatever the values are there in the drivers dot properties through db details to property loader class. Make sense? So now what I'm going to do here, now let's assume those details has been started coming available here. So how does those details will be injected? Using setter, right? That's what we wrote there. Public void set details. Sorry, set details. That is what we mentioned here, right? Set db details. Set dtt files. What are those? Properties. Done. Now you got an access here, right? And then you are calling db details here as well as the property. So equal to, I hope you guys follow, equal to db details properties. This one's db details, right? You can say whatever it is actually. So now what happens? When property loader is getting created, it looks for any dependencies. There is a db details and it looks for drivers.property. All the drivers.properties has been injected through set db details. So this is what injected into Java class. These details has been property drivers.properties has been available here, and those value will be available here and assign it to db details. Okay, what you can do as soon as it happened, you can say load connection details, something like that. Okay, so in load connection details you need to write another method, load connection details. What it will do? Private void load con details if db details is not null, if db details is not null, you are going to take the details, db details dot db details is nothing but property file dot get of what is the user, what is the values that you configured here. You just need to ask like this, driver, you will get the driver value. So you need to, that's a string, right? So you can assign it to your driver. You can assign it to driver class. So we can repeat this line 4 times because we need to load 4 values, right? Driver details and then URL, username, password. URL, username, password. Here also it's a driver, this is URL, username, password. It is crying. Oh, sorry. DB details dot get, not get property. When you say get property, right, it will return string. Sorry. Otherwise, it will return object and typecast problems will come. So I'm just replacing to save some time. Okay, now your database connectivity has been loaded, right? So your goal is to provide, by loading these properties, you need to connect to the database, right? You need to connect to the database. How do you connect to the database? So that is the logic you need to write here. Public void load connection. You know the steps, right? Throws, class not found exception, comma, SQL exception. Okay. So here all you need to do is class dot per name driver, and then connection equal to driver manager dot. This is our typical steps. You guys remember? You need to pass username, all the values that you have, password. So this username, URL, all this has been initialized through this guys. You guys getting, your guys following? So if connection is not null, what you can say? Success, database connected. Success, DB connected. If connection is not null, what you can say? Failed while loading through properties. Okay. Okay. So did you guys understand as of now what we did? All we did is, so earlier we used to do simply here, we used to pass full username, URL here, full username, correct username, password, and we say connection has been established, right? We used to execute this line as is, and we used to say it is working fine. But now our goal is configure these details in the property file and load using Spring. And you don't want directly connection, using Spring you need to load. So IOC container comes into picture. So XML file comes into picture. In here in property loader, you are injecting those driver properties files as a DB details through setters. So setters, it has been inserted. While setting itself, you are saying that extract all the details from the property files, drivers.property file, and assign it to the local variables. And then if somebody calls load connection, just establish the connection and say whether the connection has been established or not. That is what all we're doing. So now demo class we need, right? App class. Here we need to do what? All we need to do what? Application context ctx equal to new XML. I don't remember. I'll just class path, new class path XML application context, new class path XML application context. Here you need to pass what? IOC hyphen property dot XML. Very good. Okay. Once we load this XML file, what you need to do? It's typical way. You need to get what property you need to get. Just go and get the corresponding property in your class. Right? So what is the class? That is the property loader. Prop load equal to ctx dot get bean of, what is the name we gave? PPP. Yeah, PPP comma, what is the class type? You need to property loader dot class. Okay, makes sense. Then prop load dot load connection. So as it is thrown, so here also throw whatever it is. Okay. So if this returns true, then our property loads, everything worked fine, right? Let's see. Perfect. We got an error. Yeah, always do some property mistakes. I'll just copy this guy. Go here, add class. Okay. This I gave the wrong name actually. Okay. So the configuration is something wrong in XML file. What is wrong? They have a bean and then property class path location class path drivers dot xml drivers dot properties, right? properties class path. It's a pain. Okay, I'll just send drivers one dot property. Okay, and then I'll go into here. Drivers one dot property. No declaration can be found for Hmm. XMLNS util Spring framework or schema util. What is the problem with this guy? Linus XML. Why it is failing? Simple being. There is no much magic is there, right? What is the problem with this guy? Let me know if you guys find some interesting mistakes that I am doing. Hopefully I'm not doing any mistake. DB details, util properties. That is correct, right? That is how you load. You conveyed the string as well, right? You conveyed very well all the stuff. Something wrong we did in the configuration. What of what? What of what? I know what I did mistake. See, I know I did mistake. Here, the namespace is bullshit. Yes. Now let's run the program. Okay, the error has been reduced to class not found exception. Yeah, why it is not found exception? You need to explicitly add in your driver classes. You forgot to add your Postgres SQL, right? So what you can do, you simply go to JDCBC program, go here, go to your pom.xml, copy this guy, paste it in your XML settings. That is it. Yeah, awesome. So did you guys understand? Now we connected, database has been connected, so it shows database connected. Did you guys understand what we tried this in? By any chance, do you guys have any doubts? No. So basically you property file, your XML file, your Java file. How the interlinks happen, how the data has been loaded from property file into XML file, how the XML file container. When I'm saying XML container is XML file is nothing but Spring container. Spring container data will be loaded into Java class. We saw the flow inside, right? So that is one way. Another way also I'll try to show you quickly nowadays what we use most of the times. Environment. Yeah, environment. All you need to do is @Autowired. Simple. By doing environment is built in Spring class. org spring framework core env environment. What it does is when you say Autowired, when you property load is letting, it just loads this class. And if you see, if you ask, right, environment dot, I'll show it to you. I'll just display the details here. Okay. SYSOUT environment dot get property. If you are same way, I'm just displaying. So you don't need to go through all this blah 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 XML configuration, all these things you don't need to do. All you can do is URL, username, see what it happens is environment is Autowired, and when your DB is happening, it's, I'll just show. If you say environment, then it doesn't understand what properties to load. Let me say, if I say, just to save some time, right? Let me, one experiment I'm just doing, application dot properties. Okay. What I will do, I'll just copy paste this guy and see what the result will be. I think environment is tied up with application dot property file. No, something need to be setting. How do we load this? How do we load? How do we load? This environment should be small. Anyways, leave that. You know, this one we will see in when we do our new programs. I mean, Hibernate and Spring MVC integration. So for now, how do you load properties? You guys understand? Just follow the same way. Okay. There is one more topic we want to discuss is stereotypes. Let's go back to our stereotypes we need to discuss. There are 4 stereotypes: @controller, @repository, @service, @component. So basically when we use in Spring MVC controller, right, when you say @controller, just like how do you make a simple class, HTTP servlet class, using extending HTTP servlet, right? Same way here also, when you say @controller on top of your class, then that is the beginning of inputs. That is the class that will take the inputs from the client. Okay, getting my point? And then @repository is where you're going to have a database connectivity, something like that. @service is where you're going to have business logic. @component you can use anywhere. So instead of using any of them, if you use @component, then those will be it. These are all other way of writing @Autowire. Instead of writing @Autowire, how can I say? Yeah, simple way. So let's go back to this guy, right? Just focus 1 minute. Okay, we are done almost. But I'll do annotations based, but I'll just show you. IOC property, what is that? Here, right? So instead of doing this piece, what we do, @Autowire we use, right? But if you observe, we still writing the engine sections, right? Engine annotations, we are writing it. You getting my point? Engine bean configurations, we are doing it. Only we are injection is removed using @Autowire. If you want to remove these pieces as well, what you can do, all you can do is go to this class @engine class, go here @component. By doing @component, this engine class automatically injected, and you don't need to, where is this? Yeah, you don't need to configure this piece. You don't need to do anything. So which means you are going away completely with XML file. Tomorrow we will do that program. Okay. Thank you guys. I appreciate. Thanks for being flexible in the timings. Yeah, in the holidays, like I need to plan, and I don't want to cancel the classes. That's the reason I'm just trying to adjust my timings and trying to see what are the best I can do.